Thank you, James. Thank you, Patricia, Ken. Thank you all for showing up. How's everybody this morning? Good. I like that. How's everybody feeling this morning? Good. Awesome.
Did you bring one of your coats?
So I'd like to start with a quote from Thich Nhat Hanh. Our own life has to be our message. And today's talk is the path. And so when I saw that, it resonated with me on that level of our own life has to be our message. And this morning when Patricia brought up spirit groups and the people that are stepping up for that, you know, I'm going to venture a guess that if we went to every one of those people, this wasn't on their radar for them years ago. It probably wasn't what they thought they would be doing at this stage of their life. Yet as they've dug in and as they've looked at themselves, they have found that they have something to offer, and they're called to offer to community. And so when we look at the path, we can ask, first of all, what are some rewards that we might get from being on the path? Well, for me, I can speak that there's more joy in my life. There's more love in my life. There's more peace. There's more connection. And it's not just on an external basis. It's not with the people around me, because certainly that has shifted for me, but it's also just with myself, with who I am, with being at peace with, you know, my own garbage that comes up, which every day it comes up. You know, I'm like everybody else. Every day we go into battle with that side of us that wants to keep us safe. And one of the things I've learned on this journey is that that voice that has us question things, that has us doubt, that has us want to lay in a corner in the fetal position and not take anything on, the best way I've been able to manage that is to actually love that side of me and to embrace it and acknowledge that it's there, to say, hey, you know what? I hear you. It's okay, but you're not running the show today. I'm going to run the show. So thank you for worrying about me and being concerned that I might get injured, or somebody might hurt my feelings, or I might put myself in danger. I get all that. Thank you for showing up, but I've got this. It's okay. And that has given me huge rewards in moving myself forward, is to be able to have that conversation with that ego, that dark side, whatever we want to call it, that version of me that only wants to keep me safe. And that's the best way I can put it. So I have a bunch of quotes today. Usually I don't, but I have a few today. So when we get back to the rewards, you know, it's a life satisfied and a thirst quenched, I think is the best way I can put it. And what comes up for me is from scripture, enter by the narrow gate. For the gate is wide and the way is easy that leads to destruction, and those who enter by it are many. And, you know, when I used to read that, I used to think destruction was this big thing, perhaps, like we destroy our lives. You know, it has this real sort of ending finality to it. And maybe you could look at it in an old context, at least an old context for me, of getting to heaven, like that, you know, that journey of when I die is when I'll be judged and go to heaven or hell or whatever that looks like. And now the place I'm in, I actually see it as something much more simplistic. It's destruction is, it's not that idea of not going to heaven. It's that idea of not living in heaven now. It's that idea of living in a world of lack or fear, or not trusting people, or not being at peace with what I'm doing. That's the cost, is I want to have heaven right now, here on earth. I don't want to wait till the day I die and look for that. So why not live there now? And that for me is the narrow gate. See, the wide gate is to live a life allowing others to influence everything you do. where I believe the path is us tuning into ourselves and trusting that we actually know what is best for us. Now, a lot of that for me has been giving up what's up here and relying much more on what's in here. And so I'll share with you, when I went to Unity Village last year, so I can't believe it's only been a year, in August, where I went for admissions to be admitted into seminary school. And it's quite a lovely experience. I noticed even leading up to that, first of all, the paperwork, I think, was 45 pages of questions about me and why and all of these things, like, why are you wanting to do this, et cetera, et cetera. So, I did that in April. I handed it in. I was accepted to be interviewed. And so I went in August. And the rule of thumb is you have, first of all, I had to go through a psych exam. So a 3-hour test, and then a 90-minute one-on-one with a therapist about all of my answers. And then I had minimum 2 interviews with ministry teams. So 3 ministers would, 2 different groups of 3 different ministers. And it would be questions like, tell us about a time when you were a jerk to somebody you cared about. What did you do? How did you repair it? And what did you learn? So these were 45-minute to an hour long meetings of this type of questioning. So day 3 was when I had the interview with the psychotherapist, and then immediately following that was my second interview. So I went from, now just I'll backstory a little. I love to fight the man. So, anybody that has authority, I'm like, I've got to fight. That's just the way I am, right? So that comes up for me immediately. So I walk into this interview already in a place of, I have to stand my ground. So I finished this interview and I went straight in. Literally 5 minutes later, I'm into my second meeting, and I didn't take responsibility for the place I was at. I was triggered. This meeting got me fired up. And so this ministerial team are asking me questions, and I'm challenging every question they have. So I get the call, if you do 2 interviews, if both teams agree, you're either in or you're redirected, then both teams agree. However, if one team's in and one team's out, you need a 3rd interview. So I had the 3rd interview, which was no surprise, right? Of course I would have the 3rd interview. That went well because I realized what had happened. I realized that I didn't take responsibility for myself. I realized that I was triggered, and so I just owned it. I started off the meeting just by saying, look, I know why I'm here. I know why this has happened. And that's truly what they want to see. They want to see that you're self-aware, that you have the ability to reflect. And so that for me is the path, right? It's that ability to check in. Nobody else can do that work for me. So me relying on the entire world to know where I'm at is not going to serve me. That is the wide path. That is the terrain that will get me into trouble. What I need to do is focus here. And so my letter from Unity was, you've been accepted. However, we strongly feel, I love the wording, right? We strongly feel that you should do some work of getting out of your head and into your heart. That was the message. And so as I was thinking about this as a talk, the path, that's what came true for me was in the last year and a bit, I can see in myself that journey, that I have moved much more out of here and into here. And certainly the work's not done. I'm not standing up here going, hey, I'm fixed. There was nothing broken. However, what it's done is it's expanded my ability to be with people. It's expanded my ability to have compassion. It's allowed me to take anything that's happening external and integrate it and be at peace with it and have a process for managing myself. All I can ever be responsible is for me. And that's the same for all of us, isn't it? Can we actually be responsible for somebody else's journey, somebody else's path? No. Yet we want to, right?
Oh, yeah.
You know, do you ever find yourself telling people how they should maybe do things? You know, you'd be better off if you reacted this way. I still do that, and yet I know this. So that is the journey. And I'll add this quote from the Buddha: whatever is not yours, let go of it. Your letting go of it will be your long-term happiness and benefit. Said another way, whatever does not serve you, right? Whatever does not serve you. If it doesn't serve you to be in a certain state, if it doesn't serve you to be fighting the world, if it just leaves you with anguish and anger and upset, what's the point? That's not heaven on earth, right? That's the opposite. That's hell on earth. And that's where I believe this all resides, is it's right here. The journey is here and now. It's in front of us. It's not at a later date. That's the battle we have to do now. So how do we know we're on the path? Any ideas? Anybody want to comment? How do you know you're on the path? And out there in Facebook, if you have any ideas, by all means, share them. This is a community, both live and anybody do you know how you feel when you're on the path?
So you can take responsibility for your own actions.
Okay, so that's one way you know you're on the path, is when you take responsibility. Great, thank you. Anybody else?
You have to go to bed at night and have a peaceful sleep.
A peaceful sleep. How many people wake up some days just because you got too much on the mind? Yeah, right. So a peaceful sleep is one way of knowing. Anybody else? Yeah.
I think it's moment to moment being aware of consciousness of, the self-awareness. So
Right.
being in that space where you can acknowledge what's going on for myself, and then but being able to be response-able to what's happening.
Oh, nice. I haven't heard that before. Being able to be response-able. Thank you. Yes. At the back?
From Facebook, we have "You are in the flow."
You are in the flow. That's how we know we're on the path, when we're on our own path, is we're in the flow, we're being response-able. And you know what I also heard from that is it's having that awareness to be aware. You know, one of the challenges with meditation is the monkey mind, right? It just goes off, and 10 minutes go by and you're like, oh man, I was meditating. And like, you've been, right? Anybody done that? Yeah, exactly, right? That's what happens. Yet that is meditation. It's that awareness that you've actually ventured off the path in that moment, bringing yourself back to your breath and knowing, oh, hey, that was just, that was a rabbit hole. That went on for way too long. But don't beat yourself up over it. I was on a call yesterday with a group of men, and there was some guys I had never met before, and one of them had a great analogy, and he was talking about so I'm getting ahead of myself. Just pause, breathe. Okay. What amazed me yesterday was I had this talk sort of loosely outlined, and then I get on this call, and so much of this call was about today's talk. It was beautiful because I was able to pull some things for my own awareness. So this gentleman that I had never met before talked about, he plays billiards a lot. And he's come to realize that whenever he's setting up for his shot, and with billiards, for those that are really good, they're planning their next 5, 6, 7 shots. Like, they've got the whole diagonals figured out. They know where everything's going to go in their mind, and that's what they're aiming for. And so he figured out that whenever he's thinking about where he doesn't want the cue ball to land, that's where it ends up. That's the thing, right? He realized, and so when he said that, I had this great chuckle, because it's so true. When we think about whatever it is we think about, whether it's the stuff we want in our life or the stuff we don't want in our life, we are right? It's going to show up. Now, it doesn't mean that if you just have a momentary thought, that's what happens. It's the stuff we ruminate on, right? It's the stuff that we keep going back to, that we want to shift that way of thinking. And then another gentleman on the call said, when I think about being on the path, And for him, it's a narrow path. He actually said that. I think about times when maybe I get into some brambles or there's some blockage on the path, maybe some boulders. And what's really great is I have found that my connection with others, the community I've built around me, people show up and help me to remove those blocks. And I just thought that was so beautiful. Like that is the journey. And along this journey, when I go back to the people that are stepping up for spirit groups, and I know for myself, when this journey began, people that I used to hang out with began to drift away in some cases. And the path became somewhat lonely. And then it started to build in a different direction. And then my community started to grow with people that are like-minded, that are also on a path where we can share ideas, we can exchange beliefs. And so sometimes the path looks really dark and looks really lonely. And that's also when you know that maybe you're up to something for yourself. I often think of our great artists in the world, that have gone way back over time. They seem to have this great ability to isolate themselves and do what's right for them. And in some cases, the work that they do ends up becoming, historical, right? They didn't know that when they were doing it. They were just doing what was called upon them to do. And somehow it lasts in time. It resonates with so many other people. And so I'm not saying we're all going to be famous. That's not what this talk is about. Although, maybe somebody will be famous as a result of their path. But that's usually not what they're after. They're usually after what's true to them. All right. So I'll finish today with another quote. And I love actually finding today musicians or artists that seem to resonate with so many spiritual teachings. And there's one, for anybody familiar with the Tragically Hip, so I'll bring some modern music into this. Gordon Downey, I think he was a great songwriter. He had some real depth to humanity. I have no idea whether he was a spiritual man or not. It doesn't matter. He had a way of bringing humanity and that reality of being a human being, of what it looks like, to the surface. And so one of his great talks, or one of his great songs, there's this line, "Illusions of someday cast in a golden light." So when I think about that, it's, when we're dreaming, we're thinking about, someday I'm going to, this is how it's going to look for me, right? And it's that golden shroud of beauty around it as we cast our vision into the future of, life is going to be so fantastic. No dress rehearsal. This is our life. We don't get to practice at it, right? We don't get to see if it's going to work out first. We just have to have that faith, that belief that what we're doing is our truth. And that's so important when you're on a path, that not everybody's going to agree with you. Not everybody's going to like what you have to say. It's okay. As long as you're true to yourself and coming from here, that's the key in my world. That's what I believe, anyhow. So let's take a moment now, if you will, if you'll join me. And if you're comfortable, you can close your eyes. If that isn't comfortable for you, then I just invite you to cast your gaze down and just look a few feet in front of you, just to have your own moment. My invitation at this point is to come up with one word that speaks to you for just maybe your path for today, maybe your path for this moment. Whatever that word is. Could be love, could be surrender, could be joy. And just bring that word into your consciousness. Just allow yourself to see that word, maybe see the letters spelt out right in front of you. And see if you can bring that word into your heart feeling, into your heart center. And if you find your mind has already drifted off, just come back to the word. I'm going to invite you to maybe push a little further here, and let's see if we can hold this space for just a couple minutes together. Allowing yourself to be that word. Gently bringing ourselves back to this space. Acknowledging one another and acknowledging ourselves for taking this time together. Feeling gratitude for this moment. I invite you to have a word for your path, to call upon it. And if you sit in prayer or meditation, to work with that word, and maybe it'll change over time. So the invitation is for the next week to do that, to just take that in and hold it in your heart. Begin to center yourself on it. Have a wonderful day. When you're ready, you can open your eyes and lift your head up. Namaste.